However, not everything we did on this podcast was a train wreck, because now we
No,
get to
there
talk about the
was
best.
actually some good movies.
There's some great ones,
Yeah.
actually. It was hard to do a top 10 best. My
I
worst
will
list was
admit,
easy.
my top 3 were easy. After that, it got difficult.
Okay, so honorable mentions. I don't know if you want to start there or...
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start at some honorable mentions. Mad Max Fury Road.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I understand that. That's a good pick.
Yeah, it's fun. It's great to watch. It's very creative as well.
It almost made the honorable mentions for me.
Mm.
Actually, it was almost there. But yeah, it's a good movie. Really visually interesting. Very fast paced too.
Yes. Because isn't it a somewhat longer movie?
It's a 2-hour movie, but it did not feel like a 2-hour movie.
It feels a lot faster than that.
Yeah, I should watch it again, actually. That was my first time watching it. When I watched it for the podcast. I'd seen all the other Mad Max movies except that one.
I'd actually seen that one in theaters.
Oh man, that would have been fun.
That was an experience. Although, I didn't see it as many times as Hideo Kojima, so...
He probably watches it every day.
Well, he did. When it was in theaters, he said he would watch it at least once a day in theaters.
Wow.
I know. I can't imagine liking a movie that much.
I mean, he loves movies. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I love movies. I don't know if, like... Gosh. It's just that most of the movies that I would watch in the theater aren't, like... They're, like, 40 years old, so
Yeah.
Like, I would totally... If they had, like, 2001: A Space Odyssey in the theater,
that would be an experience.
I would love to go see... Yeah. Really almost any Stanley Kubrick movie I'd go see in the theater. Or fucking Blade Runner, I'd see that in the theater. Yeah. Definitely. Just like any of the big like sci-fi movies from like the 70s and 80s, I would have loved to have seen it in the theater. But yeah.
You want me to go to my next mention?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so my next one is a sort of mirror to my dishonorable mentions. Is Conan the Barbarian.
That's also in my honorable mentions, actually.
It's a very fun movie. I wasn't expecting to enjoy it as much as I did.
It's just great, violent, pulp fantasy fun. I mean,
yeah,
it's a classic Arnold performance, you know. Just great sword fights. James Earl Jones is the villain.
Makes a great villain.
Valeria's great. The music, oh my god, the music. Yeah. I love the music score for that.
It's just an incredibly iconic just fantasy movie. It's fantastic.
It's a fun movie, yeah. And it's also interesting because there's not as much dialogue in it as in like, especially towards like the beginning. It's told a lot through like visuals, but it's done very well.
Yeah.
Really good cinematography, the costumes. Like, I don't really have too many complaints about it, aside from that it's maybe a little bit too long, but...
Yeah. That's really the only thing I would say.
It's really good, though. I really like it. I've always really liked it. It didn't quite make my list, but hey, it's an honorable mention. You know, might as well mention it at least.
Yeah. So my next one would be Superman, the motion picture.
Superman the movie, okay. Didn't quite make my honorable mentions, but Superman 2 did.
Oh, okay.
Superman 2 made my honorable mentions. But yeah, the first 2 Superman movies are really fun, I think.
They're very good. It's a great adaptation of Superman.
Christopher Reeve's really good.
Was a very convincing Clark Kent and Superman, which is very important for this role.
I like the opening on Krypton.
Yep.
And I mean, who can forget the classic, iconic John Williams score?
Yeah.
Like, I'll admit, I've never been like a person who loved Superman the movie, but I do respect it, you know, as like, it was like a very early attempt to do a huge budget, A-list like comic
Superhero
book movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really good for what it is. I think Christopher Reeve's great.
Yeah.
Gene Hackman's a fun Lex Luthor.
I will say the only thing that's keeping it out of my top 10 list is that ending.
The ending's pretty dumb, yeah.
Which is so strange. I don't even. It's hard to know where to begin when you criticize that one, but it's just weird.
Then they reused it for the Richard Donner cut of the second one. Mario Kidder's really good as Lois Lane. I mean, I don't really have too many complaints about it. It's a pretty well-made movie. It's just, again, there's other superhero movies I like more than it. You know, like Superman 2, for example, which that is in my honorable mentions. I was surprised rewatching it again how much I enjoyed it.
That one was very good.
It's such an entertaining movie. Yeah, I mean, you got, again, Christopher Reeve is great as Superman. I love the villains in that. Especially Zod. Zod is such a great villain. Terrence Stamp, he really did a good job playing that character. He's just so annoyed by, like, the people of planet Earth. And he's just like, I can't wait to
destroy you, essentially.
Yeah, I can't wait to, like, take over your world. And I like it more than... I actually like it more than the first Superman movie. I think it's more fun. It zips by at a quicker pace. It was more what I liked out of a Superman movie. I think part of it also was just the first one, a lot of it was the origin story, which slowed down the movie. Yeah. And whereas the second one, it's just, here's Superman. You know?
Yeah, the second one gets right into it, which is very nice.
Yeah, it's a really fun movie. Again, didn't quite make my top 10 list, but it was close. It was close. I was like, you know, I might as well at least mention it. It was a fun movie, yeah. And Superman 3, it didn't make my honorable mentions, but I enjoyed that one.
Superman 3 was bad, but fun.
It was an entertaining movie just because of how bizarre it was. You had evil Superman. You had the weird, like, addition of Richard Pryor to the cast. But yeah.
So I'd say that my next honorable mention is Batman.
That's another one of my honorable mentions. That almost made my list. That was actually really close to making my top 10 list.
Yeah.
It's a really fun movie.
It is. Michael Keaton does a great job in this role. The score is iconic.
It's one of the best music scores ever. Danny Elfman's score. I mean, come on, it's great.
And then all that being said,
the Prince songs are a little bit dated, but I've kind of grown to like them a little bit more.
And all that being said, no matter how good the rest of this is, it's all topped by a wonderful Jack Nicholson performance.
Jack Nicholson, you talk about this movie, you can't not talk about Jack Nicholson. He looks like he's having a blast.
Oh, yeah.
Playing Joker. He's like just so demented and creepy, but also hilarious at the same time. He was perfectly cast.
Exactly.
You know, this town needs an enema.
Woo!
So funny.
And then I would say...
I was trying to think about it. And Batman Returns, that wasn't in my honorable mentions, but I liked that movie too. That was a fun movie. Wasn't as good as the first one, but it was fun too. I liked it.
So, the last movie in my honorable mentions that almost made it into the top 10 was Army of Darkness.
Okay.
It just barely missed out.
That wasn't quite in my honorable mentions, but Evil Dead 2 was. That is in my honorable mentions. Yeah.
Yeah, so Army of Darkness it's just a blast.
It's fun
to watch.
It's really entertaining.
It is a great Bruce Campbell performance.
Yeah, he has two performances. He has two performances. He's good Ash and bad Ash.
And even with all like the kind of silly dialogue, you believe it. He's so convincing in that role.
He is, yeah.
The chainsaw arm is fantastic.
His boomstick, it's pretty fun. I love the stop motion skeletons. The skeletons
exactly.
Are fun. Yeah, it's a fun movie to watch. It really is. When I was rewatching it, though, I will admit Some of the stuff towards the beginning, I was kind of like, like the medieval stuff. I was kind of just going, oh, come on. Like, I was worried for a bit. I was like going, is this like not as like good as I remember? And then it got to like the stuff with like the miniature versions of Ash attacking him and like all the crazy skeletons. I'm like, okay, now I remember why I liked this movie. It's a fun movie. Didn't quite make my honorable mentions, but it's a fun movie. Evil Dead 2 is in my honorable mentions though, so I should probably talk about that one. Evil Dead 2 is such an insane movie. It's an insane ride. There's just no other movie like it. It's such a great mix of horror and comedy. And Bruce Campbell, I mean, such an iconic, just fun performance to watch, you know. Groovy. You know, just groovy. Like, he's got the chainsaw arm. It's so bloody and so I love the part where the blood goes on the light bulb and like makes the room right. Oh, it's fun. It's one of those movies, it should not work at all on paper, but just all the insane choices that Sam Raimi made just make it work. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. I know it's on your top 10 list.
Yeah, so I'll talk about it more later.
I think we went. Oh wait, I did have one other honorable mention. This almost made the list. Almost made the list, and this is probably gonna surprise you.
Okay.
Rambo 3.
Yeah, that surprised me.
Originally, it was on the list, actually. I had it tied with some of the other Rambo movies. But I took it off the list because I kind of just wanted to simplify things. And I also came to the realization that I don't like it as much as the first 2 Rambo movies or the 4th one. That being said, though, as far as 80s action movie insanity goes...
It's pretty up there.
It's pretty great. I mean, just all the crazy just explosions. And it was such a high-budget movie, too, so you get to see a lot of just action mayhem, too. Stallone is at his most ripped here. I mean... Yeah. It's such an entertaining movie. If I was doing like a top 20 list, it would be number 11, probably. It just missed out on my top 10.
I will definitely say I will never forget the like cave scene when he's going around taking people out there, followed immediately by hanging a guy, then blowing him up.
Yeah, that was pretty great. Or how he like crashes a tank into the villain's helicopter, and the tank doesn't blow up, but the helicopter does. He's riding around on Indiana Jones's horse from The Last Crusade. Oh, it's such a good time. It's such a fun movie. After watching that one, I was like, you know, I was in just the best mood. I was, you know, it's ridiculous, but it's so much fun to watch. Yeah, okay. Is that all of your honorable mentions too?
Yep.
Okay, getting to our list, and this list was a struggle to put together, by the way.
Yeah.
Just, there were so many great movies.
There's so many of these that come so close to me, I think.
Basically, all the movies on this list, like, they're 10 out of 10 movies for me. And there's a lot of them that, on a personal level, they just, you know... Yeah. I'm connected to them, you know. Like, I'll rewatch these until I die type movies, you know.
Exactly.
Okay, so I guess I'll go first. Number 10 is Masters of the Universe. No, I'm kidding. We didn't do that on the podcast. Not yet, anyway. Number 10, Face Off.
Yeah, that definitely... I don't personally have it in my top 10.
It's not in your honorable mentions either?
It was one away from being in my honorable mentions.
Oh, damn it. That's...
But I completely understand having Face Off in your top 10.
It's in my top 10. I mean, I had to put a Nicolas Cage movie in there. I mean, come on, you know.
It's not just a Nicolas Cage movie, though.
Yeah, it's not just a Nicolas Cage movie. It's a movie where John Travolta plays Nicolas Cage. I mean, just because of the insane cockamamie premise, I had to have it on the list. I mean, there's just no other movie like this.
It's without a doubt one of the most fun movies that I think we've watched for the podcast.
It's so over the top and just, but also, and funny, but also it has room for actual character development and nuance. The Nicolas Cage again, he's doing his best Nicolas Cage, and then John Travolta, he's doing his best Nicolas Cage. The whole thing of them switching faces, again, it's one of those movies, it should not work at all on paper, but
then it works gloriously.
it's so fun. Yeah, it's very well edited. The action scenes are crazy. It's really quotable too. I mean,
oh yeah,
you know, woo wee, you good looking, you hot,
you hot.
John Travolta. It's probably, I would say, it's probably my favorite John Travolta movie and my favorite Nicolas Cage movie.
Yeah, I'd say yes to both of those.
It's just, oh my god, like just
it's just a wonderful movie.
It's so much fun to watch. Although I will say the boat chase does go on a little bit too long. But it's a fun movie. It's really entertaining. What's your number 10?
My number 10 is Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith.
That just missed out on being one of my honorable mentions. So I'm glad that's on your list. That almost made my honorable mentions.
So I think, as we mentioned before, the prequels did not have the best execution. That being said, Revenge of the Sith is by far the best of the prequels.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that.
And it's honestly probably a mix of, actually liking the movie and a sort of nostalgia trip, but I just absolutely love this movie.
It's really, again, kind of like Face Off. It's like really over the top and fun, but there is actual emotional stakes going on.
And once you get to the end, it's honestly pretty sad.
It's super depressing, yeah. And just, I love Ian McDiarmid in this movie.
Yes.
That's part of why I was considering putting it in my honorable mentions. I was like, this is the Emperor that I love, just like this crazy, conniving, evil, slimy son of a bitch, just unlimited power!
Unlimited power!
Always shocks Mace Windu out the window.
And then again, say what you will, Hayden Christensen's acting isn't the best, but he has a physical presence.
It's more the script, I think, than his acting. Yeah. He's actually a pretty good actor. If Shattered Glass, he's really good in that. If you haven't seen it, but yeah, he physically, yeah.
He looks intimidating when he becomes a Sith at the end.
He does, yeah. There's moments you look at him, you're like, yep, that's Darth Vader.
And this is really the movie that cemented in my mind that I don't think anyone else could have played Anakin.
Really? Okay.
Because something about, like, I cannot imagine any other look for Anakin at all. I couldn't see any other actor.
One actor they were considering was DiCaprio. They were considering putting him in as Anakin.
I don't think I could see that, though. Like, there's just something about the way that Hayden looks that I think is perfect for this character.
Of the prequels, that has one of the best scores, I think.
Yeah.
Just, there's, like, scenes playing in my mind with the music. I'm like, it's iconic. It's a really good score. We haven't even mentioned Ewan McGregor yet.
Oh, he is fantastic in this movie.
You totally buy him as Obi-Wan. And I really wish that instead of doing Phantom Menace, I wish they had Attack of the Clones
as the first one.
As the first prequel. And then a movie in between that and Revenge of the Sith covering, like, the Clone Wars. So then they could develop their friendship more. Because this is the only one of the prequels where I felt like they actually were friends.
Yeah.
And again, Obi-Wan's just, he's throwing out all these one-liners, just like, so uncivilized,
And then again, on the opposite spectrum of that, at the end, his speech is a little heartbreaking.
Where he's
Well,
saying,
after,
You are my brother, Anakin."
yeah,
That's a really, yeah, that part. I think the last time I watched this, I think I cried at that part. Actually, like it really got to me. Like it was such a sad moment, and he sells it really well.
he does.
We haven't even mentioned General Grievous.
Grievous is a great villain. You know, you also have Christopher Lee back as Dooku for part of the
Grievous
movie.
deserved more screen time, I think.
He did.
He was a fun villain in that. He spends most of it just hacking and coughing and stuff. But when he's doing that lightsaber duel between him and Obi-Wan is just great. And that chase scene on those bikes, I kind of just want to watch this movie right now. It's so great.
Sometimes I'll get in that mood. It's like I want to watch Revenge of the Sith right now.
Like it's my favorite of the prequels. It didn't quite make my. It was really close to making my honorable mentions. It really was actually, but I knew part of it was I knew you'd be mad if I didn't even mention Evil Dead 2.
Yeah.
And then just some of these other ones I felt like Batman Begins isn't I didn't put that in the honorable mentions or on my list, but that almost made the honorable mentions. So it was hard, just limiting it to just 5. But yeah, I do really enjoy Revenge of the Sith. I really do. Like of all the prequels, it's really the like Phantom Menace and Attack the Clones. They feel more like guilty pleasures for me.
Yeah.
But Revenge of the Sith I can actually defend as a good movie.
Yeah.
I think it has the strongest plot and characters. Some of the dialogue is really cheesy, especially the stuff with Natalie Portman and Hayden Christensen, but I think it's got a good it's got a good balance between being depressing and being fun.
Exactly.
It's really dark though, like for a Star Wars movie. Like you're just like, holy shit, but it fits, I think. It's the downfall of the Republic. It's Anakin turning into Darth Vader.
And not to mention, like, it's okay that it's a little bit dark because we know the events that come after. We know that things will turn out all right eventually.
It's the only one of the prequels that actually felt essential to me.
Yeah.
That was really the only one where I was like, okay, this is actually a part of the story I cared to see. Because the other two, I'm like, okay, I don't really care about pod racing and whatever. Or Attack of the Clones, you're just like, oh, it's just a build up to there's the Clone Factory. Like they're fun movies, but they're not as good as Revenge of the Sith for sure.
Yeah.
Again, I'll take those any day over the Disney Star Wars.
Exactly.
Well, except for maybe the spin-offs. The spin-offs aren't like Solo. I really like. My number 9. You might be surprised that this is a little bit low. The Dark Knight.
I was actually very close. That's my number 8.
Oh, okay. There's my number 9. I think it's it's the best Batman movie for me.
It's same here. It's a very solid movie too.
It feels complete. It feels like the scenes are there for a reason. It kind of feels like a crime drama mixed with a superhero film.
Yeah, it really does.
There's all the mafia elements.
And one thing that I
great
do like
score
about it
by Hans Zimmer.
Oh yeah,
it's very action packed, very intense. It does start off a little bit slow, but once it gets going, it is just fantastic. It's so great. I think I think the main reason this is on my list though is because of Heath Ledger's performance.
Oh yes.
That's the main reason it's on my list. I was like, I can't leave it off the list. That's such a great take on a famous character. He completely reinvented that character.
Yeah, because you see any other attempt to play the Joker after, they're trying to emulate Heath Ledger, basically. Except for Joaquin Phoenix, but...
Before him, you had Jack Nicholson, and for a while he was kind of just the gold standard
Joker
performance. Well, unless you prefer the animated series, which I think you do, but
Yeah.
then Heath Ledger came along, and yeah, he knocked it out of the park. It was such a great performance. He's so creepy. He's so intimidating, but again, he has such a dark sense of humor that you kind of love him.
Yeah.
And his plans are just insane. Like you don't know what he's gonna do next. He even admits he doesn't know what he's gonna do next because he said, "You know what
Yeah.
I am? I'm a dog chasing a car. I wouldn't know what to do with it if I caught it. I just do things. Like he doesn't know what he's doing, and it's just
Yeah.
really, oh my god, it's such a good
And
performance."
another thing that I will say that I loved about
And
this movie is that
he was the first guy to win an Oscar for playing the Joker too. I
yeah.
should point out, and well deserved actually. I would say that's well deserved.
So one thing I really like about this movie is that it stands on its own as well. Like you don't need to see Batman Begins to watch this.
People like this even if they aren't Batman fans.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just you go to the IMDb like top movies. This is like in the top 5, I think.
Yeah.
It's at the least in the top 10. Like people they consider this just a great movie. And Christian Bale, I mean, say what you want about him. He was a damn good Batman.
Yeah.
He was really good as Batman. And Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, exactly. I was about to mention that. His Bruce Wayne is very good.
And some performances that kind of get forgotten about with this movie. Aaron Eckhart as Harvey Dent. I think he's great.
Yes. He makes a fantastic Two-Face. And one that's much more faithful than the Batman Forever.
It really makes me wish they'd done more with his Two-Face.
Yeah.
But he was fantastic as Harvey Dent. Fantastic. He kind of serves as just this mirror image to Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. And Gary Oldman, he's really good in this. Really all the cast, Michael Caine, Morgan Freeman, like everybody. It's just a great cast,
Exactly.
Top and bottom, it's great. Like the only reason this is so low on my list is just I like the other stuff above it a little bit more. Just because this is a fantastic movie. I can't argue with that. It's very well put together. Best Batman movie. I mean, bar none for me. I mean, Batman Begins was really good, but
yeah,
it is still the origin story. It does take a little bit for Batman to show up. And The Dark Knight Rises, it had some problems with the script, but it was entertaining.
Yeah. I think I'd agree with you that The Dark Knight is definitely the best Batman film.
Yeah. Live action, at least. It's been a while since I've seen Mask of the Phantasm.
Mask of the Phantasm was really good from what I remember, but it's been a while since I've seen that too.
I remember it being good. I don't remember. I don't know if it was great, but definitely wasn't bad though. I did find it a little ridiculous how they're mistaking this other the mad what the hell Phantasm for Batman. That didn't make any sense. They look nothing alike. What's your number 9 then?
My number 9 is Escape from New York.
Oh, okay. It did make the top 10 for you.
Yeah.
I'm very pleased by that. It's higher on mine, but yeah.
Yeah, I figured as much. But just to kind of talk about what I loved about it. So, I hadn't really seen many John Carpenter films before this. I had seen Halloween and I had seen The Thing.
Both great movies.
Yeah, I loved them. So, I didn't really quite know what to expect going in, but...
It's very different from those.
It is very different.
You can still tell it's a John Carpenter movie, though, because the music and the look, but yeah.
Yeah, I loved just about every second of this movie. There's some parts where it's a bit slow, but I loved all of the weird characters that are living in prison version of New York. I thought Snake was a cool hero. The soundtrack was awesome. I love the Duke of New York.
Yep, number 1. And he's played by Isaac Hayes, too, the guy that did the theme for Shaft. That's pretty great.
And then you have Donald Pleasance playing the President of the United States.
And you don't even question it either, just because I mean he's Donald Pleasance. I mean,
yeah,
it's pretty great. Yeah, it's higher on my list, so I'll talk about it a little bit more later. But
okay,
did you have anything else to say about it? Just
I think that's about it.
It's a pretty solid film, I think.
Yeah,
top to bottom. My number 8. Your number 8 was The Dark Knight. My number 8.
Yep.
Is First Blood / Rambo, the 2008 film.
Oh, okay.
I had them tied. Originally, it was going to be a 3-way tie between First Blood, Rambo 3, and Rambo, but I took Rambo 3 off the list just because I felt these two movies were stronger.
So I do have First Blood in my top 10 list, but it's a little bit higher.
Okay, that's good. I'm glad. It's a great movie. It really is.
Yeah.
I've mentioned before, Rambo, he's one of my favorite characters in general.
He's so incredibly iconic.
I love Stallone's performance. He's great. He's great in the action scenes. He gets some emotional moments in these two movies, which are great. First Blood, you got the that really famous speech he gives at the end where he's talking about his friend that got killed by the bomb, and it's heartbreaking. It's some of the best acting Stallone ever did, or really anybody. It's such a great performance right there. And First Blood, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous just having all these cops just just tracking after him and stuff, and they're kind of incompetent, but I mean, Brian Dennehy, he gives a fun performance as Teasel. Yeah. He's really good. And also, I just like the whole idea of how he's bringing Vietnam back to America. He's just setting up all these traps in a woods. Oh, it's fantastic. It's so good. The music score by Jerry Goldsmith. I love the music. It's so good. It's got really good like emotional cues, but also really good in like action cues too. And this was a low budget movie too.
Yeah.
And the stunts are so good. It's such a good movie. It feels weird though comparing it to the rest of the series, just because you're like,
it is a very different movie.
It's kind of just this standalone movie, but it works so well.
Yeah.
And then I had that tied with the fourth Rambo movie, which I feel like these two movies go together pretty well. Like Rambo,
they do. They match in tone much better than any of the other movies, I would say.
Yeah, the fourth one, I think it went back to the more like gritty, like psychologically damaged tone that the first one had. Like Rambo, he's having nightmares, like PTSD. That nightmare scene, I actually would rewatch that a lot after doing the podcast, because I was like, this is a really good scene. Like,
it's fantastic.
It's well edited, yeah.
And this movie almost made it onto my honorable mentions. It was just outside.
And you said that was your second favorite of the Rambo movies?
Yep.
Okay. And the action scenes are just insane. Like, he rips a dude's throat open. He's got that, like, machine gun on a turret. He's just blowing people up. Oh, it's...
He disembowels the main villain.
So great. It's so good. Yeah, he cuts the dude's chest open. He turns the dude into a gutless fuck, and the guy even got called a gutless fuck earlier in the movie, so it's perfect. It does a good job touching on, like, more serious issues. Like, it does a good job, like, going into, like, the oppression of, like, the Burmese and stuff, and it works really well. I think it's a really good movie. I would say my only problem with that fourth film though is like some of the supporting characters.
Yeah, a lot of them. I don't really remember anyone except for the very angry British man.
Yeah, that was kind of just. But yeah, they're both great movies though. it's kind of hard for me to pick between First Blood and the fourth one, just because
Mm,
they I think they complement each other so well.
they do.
They're so well done. Kind of, I just want to keep talking about Rambo. Just I feel like Rambo at the end where he's like, nothing is over, nothing. You just don't turn off. But there is one other Rambo movie that I will be talking about. Just,
I figured as much.
But yeah.
So my number 7 is Alien.
Okay. Yeah. Huh. I would have thought this would be higher for you.
I will say this is a fantastic movie, and I love it to death. It's just I happen to love the other movies just a little bit more.
So does that mean Aliens isn't on your list?
No, Aliens is not in my top 10.
Damn it.
That one was just below Face Off.
Okay. They're both on my list, if it isn't obvious. But yeah, Alien is really good.
Yeah. Alien is one of my favorite horror films ever.
Very understandable, yeah. And sci-fi.
It's so atmospheric.
It's a great sci-fi movie too.
Yeah, and the world is so believable in this as well. Like, I love all the little details that they have included there. The visual design of the alien and the engineer ship is just incredibly cool to look at. I love most of the characters. I can remember them better than I can, other characters in the later Alien films.
Yeah, like the characters from Alien 3 or
yes,
Resurrection or the fucking Prometheus or Covenant characters. Yeah. It's a great cast. I mean, you got Tom Skerritt, you got Sigourney Weaver, you got Yaphet Kotto, John Hurt, Ian Holm. Veronica Cartwright. I mean, it's a great cast.
And it's a very, very tense movie, especially when you get to the end, when Ripley's blowing up the ship and trying to get off with the cat.
It's such a great movie, yeah. I'll talk about it later, because it's a little bit higher on my list. But my number 7, you're probably not surprised by this, because of my number 8, but did you have anything else to say about Alien? Or
I think for now, that's all I have. I'll probably have more to add when we get to it on your list.
My number 7 is Rambo First Blood Part 2.
Yeah, I figured.
Now, okay, if I was taking these movies just on pure entertainment value, this would probably be in the top 3. Because for me, this is like...
It is a very fun movie.
This for me is like the height of 80s action movies. Like, it's just... A lot of the stuff it does is like pretty cliched now, but like just where you got the one-man army just going in, killing a bunch of like...
Yeah, one-man army is right for this version of Rambo.
Yeah, and Rambo, yeah, it's just, I mean, Stallone, he's doing a lot of his own stunts too,
Yeah.
It's a very easy to follow story. It moves at a really fast pace. Really fast. It moves super fast. It's got a great score by Jerry Goldsmith. Very rousing, very fitting of this action-packed movie.
And the action scenes are all fantastic.
Yeah, it's the whole one-man army vibe with just Rambo just going berserk and just like...
it's like I love the scene where he blasts the dude with an explosive arrow. I love the scene where he's in the attack helicopter going back to the base.
Yeah, or the part where he covers himself. Great. He covers himself in mud and then hides against like a mud wall coming down a cliff. Oh, it's
so good.
It's so fast paced and well edited. One thing we forgot to talk about with First Blood was Trotman. I can't believe we forgot about that. Trotman's just, he's such a memorable character too, especially in First Blood where he's just basically going like...
I mean, we can get back to that in a little bit since I still have to get to it on my list.
Good. Murdoch. I love Murdoch.
Murdoch is a fantastic villain in this movie.
He's so just like... He's one of those characters you just love to hate.
Yeah.
He's just so... just completely like... just despicable. And Charles Napier, like, his character does come close to being a bit of a caricature, but Charles
Yeah.
Napier does such a good job that you buy it, you know.
And it's so satisfying at the end when Rambo picks up when, Rambo says, Murdoch, I'm coming for you.
Yeah, I love that scene, yeah.
It feels so satisfying.
Or the part where he's like machine gunning the
Oh, yeah.
computers and stuff. There's so many scenes I could talk about with this movie. Like, it's completely ridiculous, but super entertaining to watch. And it's again, when I think of Rambo, this is what I think of. You know, this is what This is the Rambo movie for me, that is the most iconic. I like Ko.
Ko's an interesting character.
I like the weird Russian villain in that one that's also the same guy from Octopussy.
Talk about getting typecast.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's so fun. It's so fun. Like, it's just perfect 80s action popcorn.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't really make any, like, claim for it being, like, high art, but not everything I like is high art, so...
And I guess another thing to say about it, my brother Simon recently, he's, I think, a sophomore in high school, he came and he actually borrowed my copy of the Rambo series. So he watched First Blood Part 2, I think October 29th, and he went as Rambo for Beggar's Night the very next day.
Oh, nice. I love that. Again, it's just, this movie made Rambo into an icon, you know?
Yeah.
That bandana, like, long-haired lunatic that guns down a bunch of enemy soldiers. You know, he's so ingrained in pop culture, and this movie is a huge part of why that is.
Yeah.
It's so fun to watch. Okay, what's your number 6?
Number 6. I don't think we've talked enough about this yet. Let's talk about First Blood again.
Okay.
Again, I absolutely love this movie. It's by far my favorite in the Rambo series. Because it is able to be an action film, but it's also able to be a bit more serious, a bit more down to earth, and actually have something to say.
It's a perfect tone balance, yeah.
Yeah. And again, that final speech that Rambo makes in the end is absolutely gut-wrenching.
Yeah.
But even before that, all of the action in this movie, it's pretty entertaining. To see, especially that last, it's not exactly a gunfight, but Rambo running around the town, causing all sorts of distractions.
Yeah, yeah.
That is such a wonderful scene, and I love it.
He's using war tactics on this small
Yeah.
town. It's pretty good, yeah.
And at the very beginning, when you get those brief PTSD flashbacks, I love how they show that, because they show a direct parallel between what Rambo went through while a prisoner of war in Vietnam and what these cops are trying to do to him. And it very clearly establishes why he reacts the way he does.
They're just treating him like shit, too. They're, like, abusing him and stuff, you know. Like, it's like... I don't know how many movies had really covered police brutality at the time, but I think this does a decent enough job doing that. Even if the cops... The only thing I would say I have a problem with that movie is just that the cops clearly don't have a chance against Rambo.
Yeah, they're just kind of fodder. Despite the fact that there's not really any kills in the movie, which is fascinating.
Technically one, but it's on accident.
Yeah.
And it was Galt. I mean, Galt was an asshole, so... like, he's even more unlikable than Teasel is in that movie.
Yeah. And then one character we forgot to talk about the first time was Colonel Troutman.
Colonel Troutman, yeah, I love his performance. That's a huge part of why I love those first 3 Rambo movies, is the camaraderie between Rambo and Troutman.
And Troutman has a great opening line in this movie.
Yes, that's one of my favorite character introductions of all time. God didn't make Rambo. I made him.
I did.
It's so good. It's so good. And also just how he's chastising Teasel the whole time.
He's also just a pure exposition machine. It's like, you want to know anything about Rambo? He knows.
That's how you do exposition. You do it in a way it's easy to understand, and also it builds the characters' personalities too. And it just it's uh oh, Trotman's so good in that first one. I like him in. I don't think he's quite as good in Rambo, First Blood Part 2 and Rambo 3, but it's just he's basically just telling like a bunch of Chuck Norris jokes the whole time. Here's why you shouldn't go after Rambo, and then Teasel's like, "Fuck you, I'm going after him anyway." It's like,
and I also love the scene when Troutman ends up talking to Rambo over the radio while he's hiding out in the forest.
That's a really sad scene. Yeah,
it's so well done.
It is. Yeah, the acting. That movie would not have worked as well if it hadn't been for the acting.
Exactly.
Especially from Stallone. Like, it's just heartbreaking just hearing him talk about how his, like, friends died and stuff, and, like, he's the only one left. Yeah, it's a great movie. Like, part of why I like Rambo First Blood Part 2 so much, though, also is just, after all the shit he goes through in that first movie, he finally gets a chance to win the war. He finally gets to win, because there's that quote at the beginning where he's like, do we get to win this time? And he does. So,
Yeah.
But no complaints from me. First Blood's a great movie, too. I really love that movie. I like all the Rambo movies. They're all fun.
Yeah, they're all pretty fun to watch.
Yeah.
So, what is your number 6?
Escape from New York.
Oh, okay.
And I mentioned during the podcast, a little prematurely, that this might be my favorite movie we covered on the podcast. I think I did jump the gun a bit when I said that. That being said, this is still a great movie.
It's an incredible time.
It's got this really cool dystopian Western type feel to it and story that it makes it very much its own thing.
Yeah.
One of John Carpenter's best scores. It's a really memorable score. It was so good, I thought about finding like a cover version of the main theme and using that as the theme for the podcast. That's how much I like the score in this movie. It's cool that he like does his own scores for some movies. I mean, that's awesome. And a huge part of why I enjoy this movie is Snake Plissken.
Yeah, he's a great main character.
He's if you ask me, he's one of cinema's greatest anti-heroes. Like, he's just... Yeah. He's not really doing things for noble reasons. He's just going out there and just doing it for himself. He's got a really long criminal record, too. He's probably killed people. He's probably a murderer for all we know, or even, like, something worse than that. But he has to go rescue the president because, hey, maybe he'll get to survive a little longer. So, yeah, it's so fascinating too. Just like the fact we only get little bits of his backstory and we have to fill in the rest. It just makes him this really he's just this really mysterious, interesting villain. He's a lot like Clint Eastwood in the Dollars trilogy.
Yeah,
particularly the last two.
Yeah, he's definitely supposed to be a man with no name type character.
And also the fact Lee Van Cleef is in the movie too, and he's in those two movies. Yeah. The effects, they're a little bit dated, but they work for the movie. It has kind of this interesting 80s like neon look to it that I like. That makes it really futuristic, but also you can tell it's the 80s.
Yeah.
And the cast, I mean, it has such a great cast of character actors.
Yeah, they're all fantastic.
Donald Pleasance, Ernest Borgnine, Harry Dean Stanton, Isaac Hayes. Yeah, Ernest Borgnine. He's just this. I love how he has this
wonderful
happy
taxi driver.
He's just this happy-go-lucky taxi driver in this like just horrible city state that's like
it.
And just all these strange characters that he meets. It's such a cool setting.
It really makes you think, how did how did this taxi driver get sent to New York Prison Island?
That's true, yeah, because they're all like, yeah. And once you go in, you can't come out. It's just the stakes are
Yeah.
really high. It's a really intense movie, and you don't exactly know what's gonna happen every step of the way, too. But at the same time, it also feels very like comic booky and like
Yeah.
serialized. And that gives it an interesting feel. It's one of those movies. It's kind of hard to describe why it works, but I think just a lot of it just has to do with the atmosphere of it.
Yeah.
Like John Carpenter movies, they have this very distinct atmosphere. It's a huge part of why I love the first Halloween movie so much, and The Thing. Even like some of his lesser movies, they still have really interesting like feels to them.
Yeah. You can definitely tell when it's a John Carpenter film.
The cinematography, for one thing, great cinematography. I have to mention that.
Yeah.
And it wastes no time on exposition.
It's over. Everything is said really fast.
It's set up so quick. You know exactly what's going on, why things are going on. It's just, let's take you on a ride,
Yeah.
Definitely one of my favorite John Carpenter movies. It's probably my second favorite John Carpenter movie behind Halloween. It's definitely up there, for sure. I love the movie.
Yeah.
But yeah. So that's my number 6. Very curious what the
5.
rest of this is going to look like, because it sounds like it's going to be a little bit different from mine.
Number 5 might be... I don't know if it'll be shocking, actually. We'll see.
Wait, is it the Russian version of Treasure Island?
Yes.
I was like wondering where that would show up on your list, because I knew you loved it, and I'm so glad it's on there. It's not on mine or my honorable mentions, but I'm glad it's on yours. It was a fun time.
I love this movie so much.
I guess part of it is you have like childhood nostalgia for it.
Yeah. Outside of the Star Wars films, this is probably the movie that I've most watched that we've seen on the podcast.
Okay. Wow.
The week that I got sick with COVID, right before we did the Rambo series, I ended up watching it twice that week. And then I watched it like another time for the podcast, and I've watched it another time since. This movie is so incredibly entertaining. It's wild. It goes off the wall at like every chance it gets.
It's a very unique movie too.
Yeah, because you've got
there's so many weird touches to it. Like while I was watching it, I was just like, "What on earth? Like, just what the fuck?"
It's got an element of madness to it that's a bit hard to describe without having actually seen the movie.
I love the live action Russian PSAs. Like,
yeah, about don't smoke, making sure you exercise, don't drink.
Just show up for no reason. The characters are just
they're all wonderful.
Very full of life. I especially love Dr. Livesey.
Dr. Livesey is great. Just this huge, like, strangely optimistic doctor who delivers everything in this jovial tone.
Even when he's talking about how, you're, like, dying of, like, lung cancer or something. It's just...
Yeah. You've got Captain Smollett, the very just stubborn and irate captain the whole time.
He doesn't like what was that one line?
I do not like this crew, I do not like this expedition, and I do not like much of anything, sir.
Yeah, that was pretty good. It actually does a pretty good job of covering the plot points of the book Treasure Island, too. Which
it is a bit shocking.
It's actually pretty faithful somewhat. Like, there's obviously a lot of cartoon antics added to, like, liven things up, but it actually follows it pretty well.
And just that shootout scene when the heroes are holding down the fort trying to defend it from the pirates is so insane.
It's an entertaining movie. At some point I'll definitely rewatch it. Like, I don't have quite the same attachment to it as you do, but I definitely understand why it's on your list. It was a weird, random, just one-off episode that I'm really glad we did, because it was just so, yeah.
And I don't know how much I mentioned this, but even outside of the live action song segments, just the soundtrack of the whole thing is pretty good.
It's kind of this weird video game music, but
Yeah.
and the pirate band performances, and the bizarre song interlude, PSA. Yeah, it's
insanely memorable.
There's nothing else like it. There's just nothing else like it. I also like how the end credits, they have like the
the actors dress up like their characters.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. I wish more movies did that. But yeah, there's just I don't know how to even talk about this movie, but it's so strange, but because of that, it's very charming and just kind of just this weird peek into like that time in Russian history too, like just
yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. I should rewatch it at some point. Like talking about it makes me want to rewatch.
It's definitely great to watch it with somebody else for their first time.
Oh man,
because they're just so baffled.
Imagine if I watched it for the first time, like with you sitting there. That would have been just. Oh god, that movie's nuts in a good way.
One last thing. I also love how whenever they introduce a main character, they get like a character bio that pops up that tells you about them a little bit.
Yeah. It's pretty good, yeah.
It's all these weird little touches that just make it an absolute treasure to watch.
It's pretty fun, yeah, no pun intended. But yeah, that's your number 5, right?
Yep.
And again, I understand. I definitely get it. It was a fun movie to watch. It's just when I was making the top 10 list, I was like thinking, I have higher priorities than this weird thing. That's one of those movies I wouldn't even know where to rank it.
It is a little hard to rank.
It's so much its own thing that I just I wouldn't even begin to know where. But yeah, okay. My number 5 is Alien.
Yep, that fair.
Shouldn't be a shocker. I mean, it's one of the greatest sci-fi movies ever made. I kind of put it at number 5 purposely because my number 6 is Escape from New York.
Yeah.
And I wanted both the Harry Dean Stanton movies to be right next to each other. So, yeah. So that's part of why Alien is number 5 and Escape from New York is number 6. But yeah, God, I mean, where to start with this movie? It's a horror movie on a spaceship, which I love that whole vibe going on. The set design is so good. You buy completely that this is a spaceship. Like it feels like something people have lived in for a while, and that they're doing like missions on. It's great. And the design, the xenomorph is such a great like cinematic monster too. Like such a great villain, like such a memorable villain. And this movie holds up well on rewatches just because of how fascinating their discovery of its different traits and abilities are. Like,
because it goes through the whole process of finding out what is it.
It has acid for blood. It like shoots.
It latches onto your face. It plants its eggs inside of you.
It rebirths out of a person's chest. Like it shoots out its own mouth at people. It's just it's
got like a spear for a tail.
It's such a crazy design, and it's so like it's so cool, but also so freakish at the same time. Like H.R. Giger's designs, like for the ship and like the alien, just very, very memorable, very iconic, very hard to describe.
Yeah.
I remember one time, before I'd seen any of the Alien movies, I remember my dad was like, Alien vs. Predator was on TV, and I saw like a few minutes of it like my parents weren't letting me watch it because it was a horror movie. I was too young at the
Yeah.
time. And I was like asking him what it was about, and he's saying, "Oh, they're like in the Arctic, and there's this big pyramid with like aliens fighting each other." And I'm like, "Whoa, that sounds awesome!" And I was like, "What do the aliens look like?" And he was like saying, "I don't know." Like he couldn't describe what they looked like.
It's almost impossible to describe because it looks part bug, but also like partly mechanical.
Yeah, it's a good costume too. You forget that
It
that's
is.
a costume, and a guy was wearing it. But the movie's like so well edited and so lit that you don't notice either.
Exactly.
Yeah, just the music, Jerry Goldsmith's score is really good. It always is. He always turns in a good score. The cast. I mean, the cast is just perfect. Everybody was perfectly
Yeah.
cast. In particular, Sigourney Weaver as Ripley and Ian Holm as Ash. People kind of forget that this movie has two villains. You have Ash and you have the Xenomorph, and they're both great.
I was just about to mention I love Ash's performance.
Ian Holm, yeah, he's so good too. Yeah, he's like really. And you totally buy that he's an android too. When you find that out, you're like, oh yeah, that actually makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. That scene where he tries to kill Ripley, that's like really intense right there.
Yeah.
And Ripley's just a great character in these movies too. She's like really badass. Whenever all of her crew members die, she's able to fight for herself against this alien.
And save her cat in the process.
Save her cat, yeah, that's another really huge positive of this movie. The cat survives. Love the cat survives. Yaphet Kotto, he goes from being a James Bond villain and Live and Let Die to getting killed by a xenomorph in this. I think that's pretty great. Yeah. He might be the only person to have that distinction, actually. At least that I can think of. John Hurt, he's great. He always is in a movie. And his death, he probably has the best death scene in any horror movie.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a memorable, and the first time you see it, it's really shocking, too. Like, nobody was expecting that.
It still gets me every now and again when I watch it. I forget exactly when it comes.
It's gross, too, and, like, yeah. The special effects are great. It's a slow burn, but it's so well paced. It's really suspenseful. You care about the characters and just all the terrors being unleashed on them. It's a movie, it could have so easily been terrible. It very easily could have been, but the execution is just masterful. Ridley Scott, like, what happened, dude? Like, how did you go from making this to making Covenant, for fuck's sake?
Yeah, it's a downgrade overall.
It shows that Ridley Scott, he used to be a great director. He used to make great stuff like this. Yeah, I don't know what else to add. It's just, oh man. It's so good. It's just, and it's only number 5. That shows you how much I enjoy the rest of this list. It's a perfect movie, and it's only number 5.
Is it time for my number 4?
Yeah.
Another movie about aliens, Star Wars.
The
original, Episode 4.
Yeah, Star Wars, also known as A New Hope.
Just an absolutely fantastic, just wonderful movie.
This is the classic good versus evil story,
Yep.
Has like it introduces one of the greatest movie villains of all time.
Yep, Darth Vader.
Yeah.
Just so incredibly iconic and memorable.
Yeah. Although I wish he did. I do wish he did more in this one.
Yes.
Because he's more of a henchman.
On top of that, in this film, we also get Grand Moff Tarkin.
Yeah, Tarkin's pretty good. He's not as good as Vader, but he's pretty good.
Yeah.
Peter Cushing, he gives a good performance. And it's also showed, like, it's kind of funny, like, reading about some of the behind the scenes, like everybody loved him on the set.
Oh yeah.
Like it sounds like he was just the sweetest man. Like Carrie Fisher, is she found it like really hard to do those scenes with him where it seems like she hates him because she's like, I can't be mean to this guy. He's just such a nice man. Even though his character is just so evil, like he's just yeah.
And another thing that this movie does just incredibly well is it builds a very convincing universe.
It's such an it's such an
you are just sucked in.
It is, yeah. Like George Lucas, like you can criticize him all you want, but he created a really fascinating world in this movie.
Yes.
I'll talk about it a little bit more when we get to where I have it on my list because it's a little bit higher. But
and then one other thing I do want to say is John Williams, fantastic score.
Oh, absolutely! It's like one of the greatest movie scores.
It's almost perfect.
It's one of the greatest movie scores ever, if you ask me. Yeah. Like just every track is iconic. It's so good. But yeah, but my number 4, I'll get to that one because it's my number 3. But my number 4 is Aliens.
Okay.
This should not come as a shocker.
Yeah. I was expecting that one.
I mentioned during the podcast I prefer Aliens over Alien. It's close though. I love both of those movies, but it's really close. I think part of it is just Aliens. It's such a blast to watch. Yeah. It's so fun to watch. I love the whole horror action sci-fi combination that we get in this movie. You just got them just blowing up like xenomorphs and stuff. There's that great scene where all the lights go out,
Oh yeah.
And they cut the power. How could they cut the power, man? They're animals.
They're animals.
I love that's a huge part of why I enjoy this movie. Well, part of it is Hudson. I love Hudson.
Oh yeah.
Bill Paxton. He's such great comic relief in this. And he actually goes through a character arc in this too. He goes from being just this really cocky, arrogant asshole to just crying and weeping because he realizes what situation he's in. Game over, man. Game over.
It's got a pretty good cast of characters in this one as well.
Yeah, Sigourney Weaver again. She's great in this. She's basically just going all like gung-ho action hero on the xenomorphs. It's so good. And she has great chemistry with Michael Biehn and Newt. Newt is an interesting character. She's just this like kid who's just been somehow living and surviving where all the aliens are. It's honestly one of the more quotable movies for me from this podcast. Like there's so many good quotes from this.
I also love the addition of Bishop,
yes. Cast. Lance Henriksen, he was pretty good. Yep. Yeah, it's kind of interesting seeing like Ripley, who she had a really bad experience with an android in the previous movie.
Yeah, with Ash.
And so she's really prejudiced against androids as a result. And then she turns around and like accepts Bishop as an android after he basically saves life. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's got just this huge epic score by James Horner. The amazing effects on the xenomorphs, especially on the alien queen.
The alien queen is insanely impressive.
The alien queen that's another reason why this movie's so high on this list, is just that whole fight scene between the alien queen and Ripley. Oh, it's so awesome. And it's just such this huge, scary monster, too. You thought having a bunch of them running around was bad enough. Well, good lord, yeah. I like Ripley's line, like, when she's, like, in the huge mechanized thing, whatever that was.
Oh, yeah, like the cargo loader.
Yeah, and she, like, says to the alien queen, "Get away from her, you bitch!" It's so good.
I also like the character of like the scuzzy lawyer that Wayland Yutani sent. Because especially when he gets got by the aliens, it feels very satisfying.
Why am I? For some reason, I'm not remembering his name. Paul Reiser played him. I know that. Burke. Yes.
Yep, Burke.
He was a good. Yeah, he was again another one of those characters you just love to hate. Kind of like Murdoch. He's a bureaucrat. Yeah. And that's kind of what this movie feels like. It feels like Rambo, and then xenomorphs show up.
Yeah, a little bit.
And I just love that. I love that. It has a good pace to it. Like starts off really slow, where you just got like Ripley, like she's trying to convince them that there's xenomorphs down there, and they shouldn't be like. She's like so concerned about how they're colonized down there.
Yeah.
And then they decide to send in like the Marines, and they don't think they're really gonna find anything there. And yeah, it goes south really quick. So it's such a great story and characters. It makes for great entertainment, but it also has enough emotional stakes that it works too.
Yeah.
As a movie. It's my favorite James Cameron movie.
I think I still prefer the first Terminator over this.
Terminator 2 is pretty close, though. Terminator 2 is really damn good. I rewatched those recently. I was like really impressed with how well Terminator 2 held up. I was like, damn, this is a great movie. That's like one of those few sequels I'm like, this actually does improve on the first one, if you ask me. And the first one was a good movie, too. It was a good movie. But yeah, it's kind of Aliens. I like more than Alien, but I mean, Aliens. I mean, what else can I really say about it? It's fucking awesome.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
It's great. Yeah, it's my number 4 for me.
All right, so is it time for my number 3?
I guess we could talk about my number 3 real quick because that's Star Wars.
Yeah, let's do that.
You know, also known as A New Hope. You know, it's perfect escapist entertainment. It's very well made. Like the set design. Oh my god, set design. The Death Star especially, and the Millennium Falcon, like the special effects, like a lot of them I think still hold up very well. Like all the space battles and stuff, it's just crazy.
Oh, and a lot of like the practical creature effects also just look phenomenal.
All the Cantina stuff. Yeah, I love the Cantina stuff. Yeah. The stuff with Greedo, you know, it kind of has this interesting feel where for part of the movie, it kind of feels like a Western a little bit, which is very interesting. And George Lucas himself even admitted that, like, there were Westerns that inspired it, and samurai movies as well.
Yeah.
There's not really too many complaints here. I mean, the music's perfect. The characters are all entertaining, especially Obi-Wan and Han.
Oh yes,
Alec Guinness is really good in this movie as Obi-Wan. I especially like that part where he's like telling Luke about like
basically reminiscing about his days as a Jedi,
and he looks like he's remembering this stuff too. It's perfect. Yeah.
And then Harrison Ford just plays a terrific scumbag.
This is my favorite Harrison Ford performance of the Star Wars movies. He's so good in this at just playing like he's basically a rogue. He's an anti-hero basically.
Yeah.
He's like out for himself. All he cares about is just getting the money to save his ass because he failed a drug deal with a crime lord or something. It's just, you know. And Chewbacca, I love his chemistry with Chewbacca.
Yeah.
You know, Luke and Leia, they're great. I mean, all the characters are memorable. It's populated with just colorful characters and amazing sets. It's hard to know where to like start and stop with this one.
It's also like a feel-good movie. Like when it's done, you feel good.
It is so fun to watch. Yeah, it's like I said, it's just perfect escapist entertainment. Like the only things I would say, like it really only suffers when I compare it to like other movies of the series, because I always felt like this one just was kind of. It felt a little more rough around the edges compared to the next two movies, which now you know what the rest of my list is. Um, like it wasn't as high budget and polished as the next two, if that makes any sense. And also, just I feel like so much of this movie takes place in the desert too.
Yeah.
Whereas I kind of like that they go out to other worlds and the other ones, but it's such a great movie. It really is. Like, there's a reason it was such a huge phenomenon back then.
Yeah.
And still now. Like, you know, why they're still making shitty movies with similar titles. But yeah, the opening crawl, like, it drops you right into the action. It's just, you hit go, and there you go. That's, you know.
All right. Is it time for my number 3?
Yeah. What's your number 3?
More Star Wars. This time, Star Wars Episode 5: The Empire Strikes Back.
Okay, I know what the rest of your list is now.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, what else can you really say about it?
It is absolutely fantastic. It is such a vast... I don't want to say improvement, because then it makes it sound like the first Star Wars was bad, but...
I do think it's an improvement, though.
It is. Like, everything is
as if that was even possible.
So much better. I know. It has a much higher budget. A lot of the effects just look fantastic today.
It's a really confident movie, too. Like, it feels very polished and very mature, you know? I'll talk about it a little bit more later, because it's higher on my list, but yeah. Again, like, there's really not a lot to complain about with this movie.
Yeah.
It's, like, it's well written, it's well structured, I mean...
It also introduced the Imperial March.
Yes, one of the greatest pieces of music in cinema, yeah. Really just all the music's good in that. I mean, there's not really any bad scores in the Star Wars movies, you know?
Yeah.
Like, John Williams, he always turned in a good score. Like, even people that don't like the prequels, they'll at least admit that the music's good.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, Duel of the Fates. Duel of the Fates is fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. And this movie also had the gigantic plot twist.
Yes.
Of Darth Vader being Luke's father.
Yeah, which I knew about before I'd seen it.
Yeah.
But, I mean, at the time it was like, holy shit. Like, you're not expecting it at all, but...
I would have loved to see, like, the audience's reaction to that.
I've seen videos, like, on YouTube of people showing their kids that movie for the first time and their reactions, and it's just, they're so shocked. Like, nobody sees it coming, and it's, you know, the Hoth stuff is great, like, with all again, I'll talk about it a little bit more later, because it's higher on my list, but yeah, and that's your number 3?
Yep.
It's, oh, wow. Again, I think I know what's above it on your list.
Yeah.
Should we go to my number 2 or your number 2?
Let's go to your number 2.
Okay, my number 2. This might surprise you a little bit. Willow. No. It's Return of the Jedi.
Okay.
Number 2 on the list. I love this movie. Part of it is nostalgia. You know, the first 2 Star Wars movies I saw were this and Empire. So yeah. I saw Empire before I saw this one, and it's... Cat, get away from the mic. It's such a great conclusion to that trilogy. You know, it wraps things up. You end on a high note. You know, there's another Death Star in it. They destroy another Death Star. You
know, they kill the Emperor, and no one will convince me otherwise.
Yeah. Another huge reason why Rise of Skywalker was so high on the other list. This has such a... this might honestly be the best lineup of villains ever, right here.
It is very good.
Darth Vader, Jabba the Hutt,
and the Emperor,
like, all very memorable. characters. Like, oh, that's part of why I think this one's so high. Is just I love Jabba as a character. He's such a fun,
I
disgusting character.
I will admit I absolutely love the beginning of this movie with Luke coming to Tatooine, like the skiff fight.
It's really fun, yeah.
That one's really fun to watch.
Just Palpatine again. He's so just like he's so maniacally evil, and he knows it. It's such a good performance, you know. And it also was a great wrap up to the whole Luke and Vader
Yeah.
plot line. Like that last scene where they see each other and he dies is just it's such great acting from those two.
It's also nice to see Vader get at least some sort of redemption out of all of it.
And Yoda also he
Yep.
gets a good final scene, I think. Lando destroys the Death Star. I mean, it was he destroyed in the Millennium Falcon too, his ship. I mean,
Yeah.
that's kind of perfect, I think. If you ask me, it has the best special effects of the original trilogy.
Yeah. That's definitely just due to probably the increased budget and the fact that they're already done too.
It's such a high budget. Yeah, it has the
Yeah.
best. The ship battles are so good. Like,
Yeah.
probably my favorite ship battles of the original trilogy. It does have kind of a weird, campy tone to parts of it.
I think that's why for me it's a bit lower down. It feels more like it feels a lot more like a prequel to me.
It does have some of the I don't know if it's quite the same problems, but
It's not as extreme, but you can definitely start to feel that sort of prequelness creep in.
there are parts, yeah, that are kind of silly. Boba Fett's death, for one, it's just that's one thing I don't like about the movie. Is come on, I like this Boba Fett. He is such a promising character, and they just get rid of him so quick, and in such a
Boba Fett, where?
And the Endor stuff, it does slow things down a little bit, I'll admit. But I do kind of like the interesting forest setting.
Yeah.
That was cool. And the scene with C-3PO telling them about like what happened in the previous movies, that was kind of cool. And I like
that part's kind of fun.
The celebration at the end, that's pretty good. I love that. I think what it has a lot of great dramatic scenes in it.
Yeah.
With Luke and Vader and the Emperor, it's just so good. It's so good. The lightsaber duels, it has one of my favorite lightsaber duels of the entire series. The one between Luke and Vader at the end. It's so good. It's so good. And the set design of the Death Star. I could talk about this movie all night. And you know what my number one is now, but
yeah.
we'll get to okay. Number two, I think I know what it is.
Yeah, you probably do. My number two is The Evil Dead, the original.
Yep, I knew it. You said on the podcast it's your favorite movie of the podcast, and then like a podcast later you said no, the second one's my favorite. So
yeah, this is definitely, you could have seen this one coming. It feels like a little bit of a strange choice to say that the original Evil Dead is my second favorite movie we've covered, but I watched it under what I think were like the perfect circumstances, and it just absolutely captivated me.
I mean, it goes by at a quick pace too.
Yeah. I don't even know where to really begin with it. It's so just well done for a horror movie, especially when you compare it to some of the other stuff that's out there that took inspiration from it. It does everything so much better. It's a very strong start for Sam Raimi.
It was a low budget movie too.
Yeah,
it was really low budget, and they really they did a good job.
The special effects were amazing. I still wince every time I see the scene where the woman gets stabbed in the ankle with the pencil.
That's a good like cringe moment right there.
Yeah.
That got me, when I rewatched it.
And just seeing the hell that Ash gets put through by the end of the movie.
Yeah, you feel so bad for him.
Yeah.
In that movie, like, just he loses all of his friends, and then his friends their bodies are like being used by demons to attack him. Oh, yeah.
And there's so many good, just creepy moments throughout the whole movie too.
It's got a good atmosphere, and a lot of
one
just
that I
weird eccentricities to it.
Oh yeah,
like, it's a very generic plot. That's the thing, but it like because of how eccentric it is, it gets away with it.
It's also just very well shot.
It is, yeah.
And that is mostly because it is a Sam Raimi movie, so you're gonna see a lot of Sam Raimi camera work.
Yeah.
I do love the POV shots of like the evil force going through the woods, coming at the cabin. Especially at the end when it goes and attacks Ash.
Which, if that series had ended right there, this would be a very different movie.
Yes.
I mean, for a while, it was considered like one of the scariest movies ever made.
And I could kind of see why. It's pretty gruesome and it's pretty terrifying. Again, I kind of watched it under the perfect circumstances. It was late at night, completely dark in my apartment.
I was surprised when you said it was your favorite movie of the podcast, but I was a lot less surprised when you said that the next movie is your favorite movie of the podcast. That didn't surprise me at all. That made a little more sense to me. Because for me, I mean, I enjoy this movie, but I don't love it. It's a good, decent horror movie, but I feel like the next two movies in that series were better. It kind of has that bias against it, I guess, where like because I saw the other two movies first, that's kind of what I want out of that first one. But it's good for what it is, though. I can't really, criticize it too much. It does feel kind of rough, though, in like.
Yeah, there are certain points throughout, like parts of the beginning do drag a little bit, mostly when they're trying to establish
the acting's not the best, but but yeah, it's a good low budget horror movie. It's very impressive that they were able to get away with some of that on such a low budget. Which really speaks to Sam Raimi's talents as a filmmaker. And Bruce Campbell, he's good in it too. He's a lot more restrained in that one.
Yeah.
He's a much more melancholy character.
Yeah. He's nowhere near over the top as he is in the later two.
He kind of feels sort of like when you first see Norman Bates in Psycho, he has kind of this childlike innocence to him.
He's got a Mo Howard haircut in this movie.
He has the Mo Howard cut. Yeah. It kind of has that Three Stooges vibe to some of the slapstick. Yeah. I like it, but I don't like it as much as you do, obviously, or otherwise it'd be on my list. Didn't make the honorable mentions. Evil Dead 2 made the honorable mentions, but I mean, I'd watch it again. If I watched the other two, I'd watch it again. But yeah, and you also have kind of that bias where this was like the first one of the. I think you said it was the first horror movie you ever saw.
I'm pretty sure it is the first horror movie I ever saw, because I very clearly remember watching it on the school laptop that they gave us.
I think that's how I watched it too, actually.
And then that ended up getting me to watch, other horror films later on.
First time I saw, the first one I saw was Army of Darkness. I think I watched that on like my iPod or something. But yeah. And then eventually I got around to seeing, I think I might have watched, I can't remember if I saw Evil Dead 2 or the first Evil Dead movie first. I don't remember.
Alright, well, I think I've said all that I have to say about the Evil Dead.
Okay, yeah. And because I know what your number one is now.
Yeah.
And you know what my number one is.
Yes.
It should be super fucking obvious.
Yeah, yours is very obviously The Empire Strikes Back.
That's like a no shit choice right there. That was like when I was making the list, I'm like, I can't put this lower than I mean, It's The Empire Strikes Back. just I really can't emphasize like how influential the original Star Wars films were just in getting me interested in movies in the first place, you know.
Yeah.
I guess obviously I saw them really young, and there's some people that might be thinking, okay, childhood nostalgia is kind of blinding you in this, right? Look, there are movies from my childhood I've tried rewatching that have sucked
Yeah.
so bad. There's so many movies that I've tried watching again. I'm like, why did I like this as a kid? Whereas with this one,
It holds up.
I watch it, it holds up. You know, it like the more I think about it, the more I respect what the movie was able to do. It was able to take like a movie that was already really goddamn good and then expand on it and add like more character development and
Exactly.
nuance. Like, I mean, for a while, the Star Wars series was my favorite film series, and this movie was part of why that was the case.
And then Disney came and ruined that for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like we really take for granted how good the storytelling in this movie is, you know, just like that it was able to take these characters and like
Flesh them out very well.
yeah, it was able to like develop them. It was able to like set them on character arcs that made sense. There weren't any dumb plot twists that felt out of place or any like just like the movie didn't feel condescending or annoying. It was a damn good movie. And it introduced probably I mean one of the greatest movie villains of all time. You know, well, okay, it technically wasn't the introduction, but this for me was where Darth Vader came into his own.
Yeah.
As a villain.
He definitely takes the main villain share of this one, whereas I'd argue that Tarkin was more of the main villain of A New Hope.
Yeah, he's the one in charge. You know, he's the one he's going around threatening people, you know, he's just like
he has control of Darth Vader. I mean, that kind of says it all.
And then in this one, Darth Vader, he's off his chains. He's the one running the show.
Yeah.
Well, except for you got the Emperor guy that he talks to in hologram, but those Star Destroyers are under his command right now, you know.
Yeah.
I just love the scenes of him interacting with the Imperial officers, you know, just like
choking the one guy through the screen.
Yeah, you have failed me for the last time. Just great. He's so good, and they give him more character depth too. You know, with the whole twist of him being, you know, Luke's father and stuff, and like you're starting to understand more of his motivations. He's not just like a generic like, wahaha, I'm bad guy. I blow things up and, you know, just like choke people. You know, there's more to it. You know. Boba Fett, I think Boba Fett's great in this. You know, he's this interesting, intimidating presence, even though he doesn't really talk much or do much. But just his short interactions with Darth Vader are great. You can tell like this guy is like somebody who's seen a lot of crazy shit, and if even Darth Vader is telling him to like tone things down a little bit, I mean, you know,
that just reminded me of another thing. The costume and creature design in this movie is fantastic.
Yes.
And I think that is definitely best shown in the scene with all the bounty hunters.
Oh god, yeah, definitely.
Because it's like, even though there's only one that ends up mattering to the story, which is Boba Fett, you still remember what the rest of them like look like.
And you want to know, like, where did these other guys go? Like, what did they do?
They're all so fascinating.
What are their stories? You know, just their...
Yeah.
You drop into any scene in those original 3 Star Wars movies, there's so much stuff to analyze and, like, just go, like, just so much detail. They're so detailed and, like, just these feel like actual worlds.
Exactly.
You know, at least so much as it's, you know, in that type of movie. But yeah, John Williams, again, another great score. The Imperial March. I love the Cloud City music too. That's one of my favorite music cues from any of the Star Wars movies. I love Lando.
Lando is such a great character.
If Han Solo is the Daniel Craig James Bond, then Lando is the Sean Connery James Bond. He's so smooth and charismatic and just like you want to hang out with this guy on
Yeah.
his like on his planet, the cloud, Cloud City, Bespin, which of the movies that's my favorite like location of any of the Star Wars movies. Like if I had to pick a place to live in any of the movies,
Oh yeah, it's a very beautiful location.
Cloud City, I would choose. It looks nice, and until the Empire shows up, it's pretty peaceful. Just the designs of the planets too. This movie expanded the like Star Wars universe. You see more planets in this one, which was definitely a higher budget. Definitely allowed that. And again, the story, it's more dramatic. There's just more stuff going on. There's more depth. Yeah. It's so well done. Yoda's a great character. I just like the scene of him and Luke. Yeah, some of my favorites from the.
He is probably my favorite new character that's introduced in Episode 5.
Yeah, for me, him and Lando were definitely great additions. Then the effects too. Like he's a puppet, but
he looks really convincing, like just a creature.
Well animated puppet, yeah, and it was done by Frank Oz too.
Yep.
The Muppets, yep.
Which that does make quite a bit of sense, getting the Muppets guy in to do a very dynamic puppet like that.
Yeah, exactly. And it manages to be. It has a really dramatic tone, but it also manages to end on a note of optimism. It has the characters looking out into space with hope for the future, and it works. It's such a perfect balance in tone where you got drama, you got action, you got humor, you got romance. Like it has everything.
It does.
It's considered like one of the best sequels ever made, one of the best movies ever made. I mean, the special effects are great. I can't really think of anything I dislike about it. It's just so like
not really. It's very close to being just a perfect movie.
Really, my only problem with it is more just I've just seen it so many goddamn times. So I'm just kind of okay. Yeah, I know. But every time I watch it, once I get to the climax, I'm always just excited.
Oh yeah.
It has my favorite climax of the Star Wars movies. It ends on just such a perfect. It comes together perfectly. Again, you just take for granted how well structured and how good the storytelling is in this movie.
Yeah.
It's the best Star Wars movie. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. Really, I would say that about most of the movies on this list. Just favorite movies.
Yeah, that movie especially, I think, deserves to be towards the top of the list.
Yeah. And again, I know it's an obvious pick for number one, but it's an obvious pick for a reason. But yeah. Okay, and I know what you're.
And so my number one pick is quite obviously Max Headroom, 20 minutes into the future.
No, what's your actual number one?
It's Evil Dead 2.
I knew it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's hard to describe. It's such a just insane roller coaster from beginning to end.
It probably would have made the top 10 if we hadn't done the Rambo movies and like Escape from New York, because it was close to making my list.
Yeah. But it's just so incredibly well paced that it feels like no time has gone by like at all since he started the movie.
It is, super fast.
It's an absolutely hilarious performance from Bruce Campbell. Like this is probably Bruce Campbell in top form. He is such a good physical actor throughout all this movie. And then whenever he's supposed to look like completely distraught, he looks distraught. And then whenever he's like going mad, you can really tell just by his facial expressions and everything that he's doing.
It's such a silly movie, but his performance is just he's so convicted that you buy it. You know, it's just
he absolutely sells it.
like he's funny without overdoing it. You know, he does
and of course
the physical
the whole
stuff. He's doing a lot of his own stunts too.
And it's usually just him fighting against his own arm for like a good chunk of this movie. And it's so good. You believe that his arm is possessed attacking him. And then even after he lobs it off, he still has to deal with it, and it leads to some of the best scenes in the movie.
It's
where the blood guys are coming from the wall after he shoots a hole in it, and then all the like furniture and appliances start laughing at him.
Oh, I love that. Dude, that scene where he just
It's
goes completely
so good.
That scene where he goes completely mad while every appliance is like laughing at him. Oh, that's so good.
It's just
the scene that always sticks with me though is that scene where he's gearing up. He gets the
Oh,
chainsaw
yeah.
for the arm, and then the camera zooming in and like the music playing. It's just perfect.
It is fantastic. And of course, he ends that whole sequence with that iconic catchphrase of his.
Yeah.
Groovy.
That's one of those lines that, like, in and of itself, it wouldn't really be much, but his delivery is perfect.
It's not just the delivery, but it's the timing with the whole scene too, because it does this huge dramatic pan over to his face while the music swells. It stops, and all he has to say is groovy.
Yeah, it's funny and badass at the same time, which really is the movie. That's Ash in the movie. You're just like,
yeah,
there's a reason Bruce Campbell is like a well-regarded like B-movie icon. It's because of movies like this.
Yeah.
Well,
and of course, Sam Raimi.
This and Army of Darkness mainly, but
yeah. And Sam Raimi is just in top form throughout this movie as well.
Yeah, it's a really definitely a good showcase for his skills as a director.
Yeah, it's shot so incredibly tight. It's edited like perfectly.
It's paced like fast as a bullet. It's perfectly paced. While watching it, I was like stunned at how much of the movie had already gone by when I paused it. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" It felt like 15 minutes had gone by, and it was like 30 minutes.
It's such an enjoyable movie to watch. I love it every time.
It keeps upping the ante, too. Just more and more insane shit happens. Like, just the crazy designs for the demons. It's, oh my god, yeah, it's... I don't blame you for having this at number one. Again, it's not my number one, but, I mean, it's a really entertaining movie. So.
Yeah.
And I personally, I think it's an improvement on the first one, you know.
So do I.
Like the first, you like the first one more than I do. For me, the first one, it's good, not great. This one does get into that great area. You know,
it's able to balance the absolute like just absurd humor with actual genuine moments of horror.
It does have genuinely creepy moments in it here and there, yeah. But
yeah,
it's
for instance, like when like Loretta tries to turn back into like her mom and she's like singing that lullaby, that is genuinely creepy.
So creepy, yeah. I think the reason I think that's why it's my favorite of that trilogy is just because it has such a perfect balance between being scary and being funny.
Yeah.
Whereas the first one is just scary, and then Army of Darkness is just funny, you know?
Yeah.
And they both do those well enough, but this one it takes it to another level. It's just, what the fuck is this movie? Oh my god.
Yeah, so without a doubt, it's definitely my favorite movie that we've covered on this podcast.
Again, it does come as a little bit of a surprise to me, but at the same time, I'm like, you know what? I get it. I totally get it. It's a fun movie. It's just one. again, it would have been higher on this list just if I just didn't love all these other movies so much, because again, I love Star Wars, I love Rambo, I love the first two Alien movies. There's just Escape from New York. I love Escape from New York. Just all these other movies, but Face Off. I mean, Face Off is an insane movie.
That's a long one.
3 hours. Yeah, I'm gonna have to edit this down a lot.
I guess until next time, we'll just play the Andy Griffith.
Good night, you stupid idiot. Good night, you miserable slob.